A masculine edge to have some fun with your friends. That's how I would describe Valheim, the most vacant short terms. The game, which took everything that worked in all the survival games before, trimmed down all the unnecessary bloat and dust, and decided to capitalize on simplicity, making it cozy and fun. The game which today, after over 100 hours of playtime and many play sessions on various world maps I've played, I'm going to review, call it an absolute godsend, and recommend playing it yourself. By playing it yourself, I mean don't play it yourself. Take your friends with you. No, I mean, for real. The game has some grindy mechanics and doing them all alone is going to take you a lot of time, so I recommend you to play the game with at least one friend. I know, it might be a little hard to get somebody to play with you for this number of hours, and you might not even be close to finishing the game by the time you'll be done with it, but trust me, playing with somebody else is a much better experience than playing the game alone. That being said, welcome to Valheim. Valheim is a game in which you are sent with all of your friends to Purgatory by a pantheon of Norse gods because you are not cool enough to hang around with them in Valhalla. Once you get dropped off by a Swedish Valkyrie Balbas in Malmo, you are pretty much free to go and do whatever you want. Of course, there are some core objectives of gameplay like trying to survive and make your life a little more bearable than usual, just like in real life. You can either make it by building your shack of rock and wood and then get immersed in eerie aura of the meadows, the starting zone, and spend hours running around in wrecks and defending yourself from the attacks of Grey Dwarfs. Or go the way the developers intended you to go and progress through all of the eras of weapons and tools by gathering rare materials, killing bosses, building new workstations, and immersing yourself in creating more wealth for both you and your teammates in your base. After all, it's a Viking survival game about fighting ancient monsters, building a great hole for your comrades, and gathering every little thing from the ground: plant and herbs, wood and logs, rock and stone. I will also address the big elephant in the room. Yes, the game has PS2 graphics, but it's stylized into a low-poly piece of art enhanced by dynamic lighting. And while a lot of people may feel discouraged by such a choice of an art style, I completely dig it. Since it's making the game feel comfier and also makes the eye engage, the developers of the game spend less time and resources on the sprinkles and more time on a cake. It's an indie game made by a small Swedish indie studio, which means they don't have all the resources in the world to develop the AAA game with photorealistic graphics and all the other unnecessary sprinkles. But I'm more than sure they understand how to make a great game in today's day and age. And when it comes to creating video games, there are two set-in-stone ways. One of them is all about making the game as cozy as possible to keep the player in a zen-like trance as long as possible, so they might escape from the world of reality into a much more cozy and friendly environment. A world where every goal is set in stone and it all depends on a player if the set goal will ever be achieved in its own time and pace. Second, a more interesting and much more complex way to create video games is to make them addicting. Yeah, I'm aware that nobody saw that coming, but let me make myself clear. By saying addicting, it means to make the foundations of the core gameplay of the game as rewarding as possible. Make the player pleased by actually doing things in the game, by giving them small rewards for their efforts. Set achievable goals towards which the player can work for both short and long time, and make their labor compensated. Make the players spend hundreds of hours to perfect their ability to play the game better than the average Joe. And Valheim do both of those things perfectly. Traversing through the world of Valheim, exploring different locations in distinct biomes, fighting new monsters which with every new location will trailblaze through get more sinister and hard to counter, overcoming adversities by getting good in the game, learning how to do the perfect counters, abusing the AI of mobs, or making better food to expand your health bar to sustain more than 3 attacks of your enemies without making a ghost run from your base to the place of your demise. Every small little detail of the game feels just right. The difference between starting your adventure in wrecks, slowly gathering materials to create basic tools of survival and makeshift weapons to defend yourself from the attacks of little Grey Dwarfs, creating your first shack to have some roof over your head and not getting wet, making your first campfire type of gameplay, feels slow compared to running around the plains, fighting endless hordes of hostile foolings, loxes and mosquitoes going onto you straight out of nowhere just to teleport you back to base. Embracing the beauty and diversity of every biome in the game feels oddly pleasant. Meadows are covered in vibrant green grass and dandelions, dotted with birch and oak trees, and full of lakes and rivers. All that is accompanied by soothing music which is perfect whenever you are on a mission of deforestation of all the trees around your home. The sun is shining, the trees are falling, the bees are happy, life feels good. The Black Forest is a less vibrant and happy place. Between fir and pine trees there are a lot of burial chambers, skeletons and trolls. The soundtrack also changes from a peaceful tune that inspires your hope and optimism into a much more ominous, dark feeling, making you feel the dark presence around you and your friends. Swamps, my least favorite biome of the game, is the place we arrive in after a very long peaceful venture throughout the seas on a makeshift raft, covered in muddy areas and hostile creatures which are waiting to stab you whenever you drop your guard for even a second, pretty much the most stressful experience in the game. Mountain, the snowy region which is hard to traverse through, is a home of multiple types of enemies, and also a great place to teach your friends to always build as many campfires and portals as possible. You will spend a lot of time listening to a soothing Skyrim-esque tune slowly playing in the background whenever being attacked by drakes. Plains, the most stunning and open biome in the game, filled with tall rock formations and stone monoliths, hard and dangerous to navigate through, also full of unfriendly creatures ready to dispose of all of the unwelcome guests in a blink of an eye. Mistlands, covered in a thick mist that obstructs the vision and makes the gameplay extremely oppressive but still reasonably difficult, are pretty much unexplorable without obtaining a wisp, which is unlocked by killing the 5th boss of the game. Still, extremely satisfying to experience for the first time. All the biomes which are available for now are strictly tied to the player's progression. And when it comes to how we develop through tech trees and eras, is all tied to 3 activities: finding rare materials, building workstations and killing bosses. Whenever we start our adventure in the middle of the sacrificial stones, our next step is to gather enough wood and stone to craft a basic stone axe. Use it to defend against greylings and boss. Chop down the trees. Find some basic food like raspberries and mushrooms, and then create your first provisional base with a roof, beds and campfire to cook up some meat. Then get some leather scraps from boss to craft a bow. Use even more leather scraps to create a leather armor, or even find a queen bee in one of the abandoned houses, which unlocks an option to create some honey. Once you get ready to take on the first boss, which looks like a big undead deer, do it easily without any setbacks at all. Get its trophy and unlock the first power, which provides you with a buff which reduces the amount of stamina used while running and jumping by a significant amount. We also unlock an option to craft the first pickaxe, which can be used to mine new ore and stone. Sadly, without a working smelter and charcoal kiln, we are unable to process the copper and tin into bronze. We need first to get Surtling cores straight from the burial chambers located in the next biome, the Black Forest, guarded by skeletons, which are the real first adversity we are going to face during the game. Once we gather enough cores to create the new workstations, we can finally enter the Bronze Age, craft bronze weapons and tools, and start harvesting fine wood, which can be also used in creating new furniture, better bow, and the most important tool of every professional harvester out there, a cart, which comes with its own set of problems, but frees us from being constrained by the max weight limit of inventory whenever we go out and gather materials outside. Once we get comfortable with our loadouts, we can take on the second boss of the game, the Elder, which looks like this, perish like this, and also provides us with another unused buff, and the Swamp Key, which unlocks the next biome of the game, the Swamp. We arrive at the swamp with a mission and one mission only: get iron ore from the sunken crypts while fighting on many blobs and drogres, and enter the Iron Era as soon as possible. We also learn that some materials we get are not transportable through the portal we built a few seconds ago, meaning everything related to iron has to be created in our small shelter. Once we gather some ancient bark which we'll use to create the longship, which for now is the best boat in the game, we'll have to get ready to take on the third boss in the game, the Bone Mass, which is also the first boss which requires the actual preparation before going in. It's good to get poison protection meat before going all in, but still pretty straightforward boss. The Bone Mass drops one of the items needed to further progress our gear, called the Wishbone, which is used to find hidden silver ores which we'll need to get better weapons and armor, but also a simple upgrade for Cauldron to unlock an option to create even better buffs. The whole mountain biome is pretty much a drive-by biome before going straight into the plains, since the most important thing to do in here is to kill its boss, Modder, which was one of the longest fights I've ever had in any survival games I've played. Once we gear up and dispose of Modder, we get a dragon tier used in creating artisan table, which unlocks recipes based around creating stuff made of flax and barley. Also a blasting furnace which can smelt black metal scraps, which we'll find in the next biome called the Plains. The Plains is the first big boys biome, pretty much made in mind to be as challenging as possible. Hordes of goblins that can easily overcome us whenever we give them an option to do so. Mosquitoes spawning out of nowhere to commit a casual drive-by and take half of our health bar. Luxes, which can be extremely problematic while fighting other mobs. All those natural hazards are more than enough to make you wish you didn't leave your cozy house in Meadows today. Pretty much nothing else to do in here. Gather some flax and barley, make better food, make better gear out of black metal, and get ready to take on Yagluf, the 5th boss of the game. Buff up, kill the Yagluf, take the Torrent Spirit and build the Wisp Fountain, which will be later used as a guiding star to be able to move through the hazardous lands of Mistlands. And there I'm going to stop, since I'll be frank with you guys. Mistlands is another 20 hours of gameplay, even though we've played through it, even attempted to kill the boss of Mistlands, the Queen, and failed miserably. I wasn't able to go through the Mistlands without using an online wiki, which is pretty much my only gripe with the game I have. Once we finished the swamps, I was pretty much forced to use the knowledge from the game wiki to progress through the next steps of the game. And while I'm aware of that, it is pretty much normal whenever it comes to experiencing more complex games, it can get pretty tedious to do so. That's just some food for thought. And speaking of food, the buff system in Valheim is one of the most simple and yet cool systems of the game. Whenever we start fresh in the game, we are running a pretty small health bar, which is an okay amount of health whenever we deal with boars and small goblins, but it's extremely low once we try to take on first bigger enemies or bosses. That's why we are being taught it's a good practice to keep your diet fresh and fit, and always have some good food in your bags. You are what you eat, and if you eat nothing, it means you are nothing after all. With the progression of our base and knowledge, we get more options to sustain our tummies with even more powerful dishes, making us more and more bulky and vigorous. At the end game, I started to say my character in Valheim is better than I do in real life. That's up to us to decide if you want to eat the food which will give us more stamina or health to better sustain us in combat. And speaking of combat, it's good. Combat is all about timing and blocking as much unnecessary damage as possible. Weapons have alternative attacks, blocks and parries. Wearing a shield is vital for your own survival, but it's also pretty unfair since it's easy to get overrun by multiple enemies or run out of stamina while defending yourself from the attacks of your adversary. But not all weapons are made equal, and once you start scattering through wiki, you'll discover the one and the only way to choose your weapon, which is a mace, that hits like a truck, works in 90% of encounters and also looks pretty dope. The way of Unga is always a way to go. To wrap this small review up, I just want to say I absolutely love this game. Whenever we started to play the game for the first time on Friday noon, our first session ended at 7 in the morning the next day. Valheim is absolutely stunning and addicting, and whenever I turn the game off, I always have this thought of next time I'm going to do this and that. The great core gameplay of running around with your friends and scavenging all the riches of lands which are laid upon ourselves is great. It doesn't matter if you're more into building or gathering basic materials, or fighting epic monsters, the game is here for you. And you should play it. Your friends should play it. Even your family should play it. It's also inconceivable for me that the game which is made by 10 people made me spend so many hours having actual fun, running around and experiencing all the stuff, while most of the AAA games which come out today are just an afterthought after 10, maybe 20 hours. Valheim is one of the best games I've ever played. Period. Also, the video is over. Like and subscribe for more. It was your boy, Abe here. Take care and peace.